guys, welcome back to Strong Successful Mail. So for today, I'm going to do a pretty interesting email that was sent from a subscriber. It's from a guy, I believe he's about 41 years old. He's been married for a while, kids, all that, good life. And about 3 years ago, he discovered that his mother wasn't exactly a very good mother. And the guy who he thought was his father actually isn't his father. Turns out that his mother got around quite a bit with many soldiers while his dad was in the military and being deployed or doing training. And as a result, learned that, the guy that he thought was his father is not his father. And ultimately, it's a very interesting story, twists and turns. And this mother of his, who is an awful person, is no longer in his life. She's disowned. And now, a very good one to go over here, guys, making the point that, number one, as I always say, if you're in the military, don't get married. How many stories have I covered when the second the guy goes out for training for a while or is deployed, mom is up to no good while he is away. It is so unfortunate and sad. And also how nowadays you got a DNA test. My God, you just never know. And how some women are just completely heartless and do not care. But guys, the good thing is you can always cut off rotten people from your life. And in this situation, this guy does just that and he ends up okay. So it starts off, says here, Dear SSM. First of all, I would like to say thank you for what you're doing for young men around the world. I wish this information and the internet was around when I was growing up. It would have saved me a lot of heartache. Well, bro, I wish I had someone like me around when I was younger, but wasn't the case. I had to learn the hard way. This story is going to be a lesson for all the young men out there to show you how evil some women can be. Notice he said some, not all. Showing why it's so important to do just like SSM is telling, and vet your woman before you put a ring on them and have children. There is another valuable lesson for young men in the story, but I will save that and tell it at the end. This is going to be a long story, but I promise you it's worth the ride. And for the story, you can call me Kevin. Okay, hello Kevin. In June 1984, I was born into this world in Texas on Fort Hood Military Base. My father was an Army Ranger, but as far as my mother was concerned, he was a piece of crap. Sounds like every angry divorced wife, huh? And what about her? Growing up, my father was never around. My parents separated when I was 2 years old. Like most kids in the 90s, I was a latchkey kid, only seeing my father sporadically throughout my childhood and not often enough. Growing up, my mother would tell me how my father was, wait for it, abusive, how he would leave her with no money to feed herself or me, and just how much of a piece of crap he was in general. Okay, so this, from the moment you can remember anything, she is just reinforcing how bad the dad is. Throughout my childhood, and my grandmother, uncle, and aunt would tell me the same general story about how my dad didn't take care of my mother, about how they had to send her money or to drive all the way to Texas from Virginia to help her out. During the times I beat my father on those rare occasions, he never gave any real pushback to the things my family was saying about him. The fact that my father never came around to visit me or spend time with me, along with him never giving any pushback, and the reassurances from my family members that all these stories about him were true. So growing up in the 90s, I just figured my father was a typical absentee father, and I never thought too much about it. Well, I mean, if his dad is never saying anything or standing up for himself and all that, you could see how this young guy would think this, given what mom was saying and grandma and auntie and anybody else. As I got older, into my teenage years, I would ask my father what happened between him and my mother. He would just give the typical response, saying things like, it just didn't work out, or it's an adult matter and you'll understand one day when you're older. But one thing my father always said to me was that no matter what happened between him and my mother, the best day of his life was getting the DNA test proving that I was his son and that I was the best thing that came out of this marriage. Well, that's great to hear, but that seems a little contradictory to what this young guy's being told by his mom and grandma and aunt and uncles, because a guy that was a scum of the earth wouldn't say something like that. And yet, why isn't he standing up for himself? Well, fast forward in time to me, from me being a teenager to me being 38 years old, I'm 41 now. You know how you have one of those days that you will never forget as long as you live. It was a random Tuesday, and it was about to be that day. The previous night, on a Monday evening, I was getting ready to go to bed, and as I was standing in the bathroom, I began looking myself deeply in the mirror. I don't know why, but I said out loud to my wife, laying in bed, you know, when I look in the mirror, I really don't see any of my father in me. Now, my wife and I believe in energy. We believe words and phrases are very powerful, and you shouldn't put negative energy into the universe. My wife responded with the following: don't say such a thing. Don't put that energy out there. So you guys can see where this is going. And I know there's going to be skeptics that are going to say this is a bunch of crap, blah, blah, blah. Fine. But I'm sure that many of you guys have had situations in your life, this happens to me all the time, where out of nowhere, you'll think of somebody that you haven't talked to or heard from in years, and something will pop up about them, or you hear from them. Or you'll think of a song on the radio that you haven't heard in 30 years, it comes on the freaking radio. Or a movie you haven't seen in years, and you're flipping the channels, and not only do you see that movie, but that exact scene. That happens to me all the freaking time, amongst many other things. So this is totally believable to me. And honestly, my wife was right. So I thought nothing about it, and I went to bed. That following Tuesday morning, I got up and went to work into the machine shop. Around noon, I received a phone call from my wife asking me if I had a moment to talk. My wife started up by saying that she has something very important to tell me, and it's going to change my life forever. Really, honey, and you're going to call me at work? This can't wait till I get home? My very first question was if the children were okay, and she replied yes, and they are perfectly safe. See? Dad immediately is on the kids, not about himself. Honestly, after hearing that, I took a deep breath and thought to myself, whatever it is, that I can handle it as long as my children are safe. My wife started from the very beginning of her morning, so I'll tell you the story just like she told me. So she can't just get to the fucking point. She has to just tell a whole long goddamn story. Sounds like a typical woman. And you're at work. She says to him, honey, our oldest daughter needed a particular note for school that you have saved in your email. I know you're very busy at work, so I thought I would handle it for you. He says, FYI, my wife works from home. After I got the situation handled at the school, I was about to close out your email when I noticed you had a message from 23andMe. In case you don't know, guys, 23andMe is one of those DNA test type of things. You send in, you send in your DNA from your hair or your spit or whatever the hell it is. And you get a report later on about the breakdown of your past and where you come from and all that. I've never done that. My parents did that, and it matched up to what they thought. So good enough. Frankly, I don't want my DNA sent out there, but somebody probably has it anyway. Well, a little backstory here. 8 years prior to this incident, my wife and I took the 23andMe DNA test just for fun. When we took the test, everything on my mother's side came up correct. On my father's side, there were a lot of people I did not recognize, like uncles and aunts and cousins, but I thought nothing of it because I don't know that much about my father's side of the family, because he never was around like that talking about it, and two, my father was adopted and he didn't even know all of his family. So basically my wife and I took the test and had some good laughs. I thought nothing of it for years and never even looked at it again. So I'm going to stop there. I do believe that once you take that test, somebody else looking could make some connections, I think. Now back to my wife talking to me at work, telling me about my message from 23andMe. My wife noticed that the notification in my email, so she begins to log into 23andMe for the first time in many years. She noticed that I had a letter/message that was dated 2 years prior from a man named Jimmy that has been sitting in the 23andMe inbox all this time. Well, if this guy messaged you, it's interesting that you just happen to get that email. Like probably you got that email back in the day, maybe went to your spam, maybe you didn't notice, I don't know. And maybe after 2 years, maybe they're sending this, saying they're going to delete it after a while, I don't know. My wife tells me that the man in the message claims to be my biological father. Okay, now I can see why she called you, but still I could have waited till after work. My very first thought was that this is a scam, and I told my wife that as well. There is no way this could be true because my father had a DNA test when I was a baby. Yeah, there you go. But let's remember that his dad did the DNA test when he was a baby in 1984. Obviously, it wasn't as good and thorough back then, and mistakes can happen. My wife tells me that is 100% true, and this man is my biological father. I know my wife My wife is very intelligent, a very intelligent woman who does her due diligence in any situation. My wife told me that she has not spoken to the man, my biological father, yet because he is at work. It's not your wife's place to reach out to this guy or anything like that. That's your job. She's overstepping her bounds. But she did speak to his son and his wife, and they told my wife information about my mother in the 80s that they should not know if this situation wasn't true. So she did reach out to them. That's not her place to do that. That's for you to handle, my friend. I wouldn't allow that. My biological father's wife and my wife began talking on the phone for hours long before I got home. Apparently, the more they talked, the more they realized how similar I was to the man, and when you hold a picture of us side by side, we look like twins. Needless to say, SSM, I was floored. Yeah, I'd be pretty floored too. I mean, again, the guy you thought was your dad all these years, it seems that it's not the case. Yeah, it's a crazy day. And how you were just thinking the other day about, like, I don't quite look like my dad and stuff like that. And this is my point, guys. I know a lot of you guys, this is bullshit story that never happened. Look, I'm not, hand to God, that shit happens to me all the time. I think of things, and the shit happens. Or people I haven't seen in years, they message me, or email, or some contact. I know some of you understand what I'm talking about here, so this is totally possible. When I got home, my wife told me that I do need to talk to this man immediately, and I could take time to process everything. But my wife also told me that this man is waiting by the phone for me to call, and he has been waiting to hear from me for the past 38 years. Okay, sweetheart, I just got in the door from a long day at work. I like to go in the bathroom and go to the bathroom. I like to have a drink. I like to relax for you're yapping at me when I'm walking in the fucking door. And by the way, wife, I know you mean well, but it is not your place to, I have a problem with that. I know she means well, and that's great. I'm sure she's a good wife to you. A little pushy. Type A personality. To any man out there who is married to the type of woman who is a go-getter, you will understand the type of woman my wife is. Yes, your wife is a type A personality. And why type A personalities could be good teammates and partners. And when I say partner, guy, I don't mean in a politically correct way. I'm talking about, like, in a marriage, the person that you're working with, very organized, get shit done. But type A women, to me, are a giant pain in the ass. I've dated some. I've been in a relationship with some. They're too fucking pushy. I don't need that shit. And they want to be in charge. And there's going to be a constant battle of who's going to be in charge. You're going to be locking horns a lot. It's not worth it. Man, when I was working in the gym, all the women were type A personalities. The female trainers, the ones that did the classes. Oh my God, it was fucking crazy. A lot of people working with me because I was chill. Got the job done, but I wasn't all like, come on, girls, and intense and shit. You need to make sure your wife backs up a little bit. But anyhow, the funny thing is that my biological father and I both married the same type of woman. There you go. You married your mom. But fortunately, your wife is not like your mom. I hope. Before I even got home, they were planning trips and marking dates on the calendar and already had the entire thing set up for us to meet. I'm not even joking or exaggerating. I believe you, dude, because she's type A personality, but she's overstepping her bounds in that area. When I finally spoke to my biological father, you have to understand the emotional difference between us. I was coming from a place of skepticism, talking to a complete stranger, and he was coming from a place of knowing that I had existed for 38 years and finally speaking to his son. Holy crap. And oh yeah, this is true. Your mom is obviously a big giant cheater, amongst many other things. And I feel bad for the guy who thought you were his kid. And this guy here knew you existed for 38 years, couldn't find you. When I spoke to him, he immediately started crying. After crying, he started apologizing to me over and over, to the point where I had to comfort him and tell him it was okay. He told me how he has spent the last 38 years looking for me, and he never gave up looking for me. So clearly, until the 23andMe thing came about, that's when he was obviously connected the dots and all that. Because obviously it was a lot harder back in the day, and it was harder when you were born, before the internet, and certainly before social media and all that. But he didn't stop. But again, guys, take this in. One day you think the one dude's your dad, the next day you find out that this guy, and still I'd be very skeptical, because there's a lot of scammers out there. SSM, the Lord works in mysterious ways. I literally was standing in my bathroom the night before, looking in the mirror, recognizing for the first time in my life I did not look anything like my father. The very next day, this information is handed to me. Bro, I believe you. That stuff can happen. I know people are going to say I'm full of crap. That's okay. But I know there's going to be guys out there that will agree with me, and weird shit happens. So this is what he told me happened between him and my mother back in the day. Okay, here we go. This is going to reinforce what I say about not getting married in the military. Apparently my mother was married to my father, the man that I've called my father my entire life. Well, you know how that goes, SSM, on a military base when you have a young 18-year-old girl and her husband is away during training. Apparently my biological father was just one of the many soldiers that had his way with my mother while my father was training and away. Your mom was one of those, huh? And spent her whole life telling you how much of a piece of crap your dad was and all these other things, and you're the child of some other dude. And your biological father was no saint hooking up with your mom, knowing full well she was married. I gotta say it. My biological dad was 100% honest with me. He told me that he was a young man in the military and he was just looking for some ass. So he and my mother started hooking up. He apologized to me for what he did to my father. He said that he knows what he did was wrong, and he explained that he was a young, stupid kid at the time and didn't think fully the consequences of his actions. Well, that's good he's saying that. I respect that he's saying that. And a lot of times we do dumb shit when we're young. I've done a lot of dumb shit when I was young, and I deeply regret. Can't change it. But your biological dad got his karma by not knowing you for all this time. He explained to me once my mother became pregnant, she told my father that it was his baby. My biological father explained to me that when you're in the military, if you get caught cheating with another soldier's wife, it's a very big deal for the soldier and the wife. So basically, they kept their mouths shut. That is very true. A few months later, after I was born, apparently my mom took me to his place and let him watch me for the first time and hold me. After about an hour or so, she took me back, looked at my biological father in the eyes, and told him the following. She says, me and my husband are moving to Jersey, and you will never see your son again. Ouch. Damn. Your mom has a big heart. Meanwhile, the guy you thought was your dad thought this was you, his son. My biological father told me that my mother started to walk out the front door as if nothing happened. Because she's fucking heartless, that's why. He quickly gave her his military ID number and told her to please contact him if she ever needed anything to please find him. My biological father told me, which I don't know how true it is, that if you have somebody's military ID number, you can find them and get them information about them if needed in regards to child support. Also, he asked my mother what my name was, and my mother lied to him and gave him a completely different name. Well, of course she did. A week after this conversation, my biological father and his wife came up from Alabama to see me and my family in Virginia. Man, that had to be awkward. I mean, this is your biological dad. You know, guys, this dude here could have said, hey, I appreciate you telling me all this, but I don't want to see you. It's nothing personal. I wish you well. But he didn't, I told him originally that it was not necessary and he didn't have to waste his time or money just to come up and see me, but he did. But the man was not hearing any of that. He told me that the very next day he went to work and told his boss that he was taking off work the following week, and he was not asking them, he was telling them, and if they gave him any pushback, he would quit immediately. He told them he was going to see his son, and there was nothing on earth that was going to stop him. Well, I want to point out that probably his dad is like, if you were in your late 30s at that point, he's probably early, mid-50s maybe, give or take, at this point. When I met my biological father, he told me that he could not make up for the past, but what he could do was teach me about the stock market and finance. Hey, that's a good way to go. The moment my dad and I became close is when I was an adult, when I was 20 years old. Taking some business classes, came home from school, from college. He's sitting on the couch reading a newspaper, and he had CNBC on. The tickers are flying across the screen. I'm like, Dad, what is all that shit? And he proceeds to start explaining things to me. And at the exact moment, my passion for that began, and he and I became close. It was awesome. So, cool. As I said, my biological father and his wife pulled up to my house in a brand new GMC 3500 Denali fully loaded truck. His wife had designer clothes on, designer heels, purse, and even designer glasses. Apparently my biological father has quite a bit of money. He sat my wife and I down and showed me and talked about his stock portfolios. He basically showed me and my wife what the stocks to buy and how to make money, which was a game changer. I'm guessing this was after the, awkward hugs and all that, and tears and shit, but he wants to help you out, so be it. He literally let me piggyback off his portfolio, off all the accounts that were just making money. He told me and my wife that it took him years to learn how to make money and what accounts to buy, and he said that he missed my childhood growing up, so this is his way of making it up to me. Okay, I'll take all that good information. That's cool. And I'm glad you guys have met and all that. I mean, certainly this can help you in terms of like if you ever have a disease and know your medical history and stuff like that, and you're really making this guy's dream come true by meeting you. But now here's the big thing. Now what's next? Well, during this time, I had an opportunity to speak with my biological father's wife. She told me that my father never stopped looking for me. She explained to me that she was aware that I existed on the third date 30-some years ago. My biological father told her that if they were going to get together, that she had to be perfectly okay with him searching for me for the rest of his life. So that's what he did. She helped him try to find me, but it was the early 90s and early 2000s, and there was no internet in the early 90s for the most of us, and certainly no Facebook in the 90s. And honestly, I have a very common name like John Smith. So it took a long time, and I think it's by you doing the 23andMe thing years earlier with your wife for fun that obviously opened up some things, as I'm told they do. I also spoke with some of my siblings on my biological father's side eventually, and they told me stories about how my dad would travel around the United States trying to find me using his money. One of my sisters told me a story about how my biological dad ended up in the hospital because he was so worried sick that he gave himself a heart attack. One of my biological brothers told me stories how my dad would always bring me up around the holidays or back to school time, saying things like, I hope he's having a good Christmas, or I hope he has good school shoes on. So obviously it was a while before your dad made some money and could use that to help him on his quest. Because this was 1984 when you were born, and sounds like he's kind of started his quest in the 90s. And even then, the internet was in its early stages, no Facebook, and, but he never gave up, and that's really commendable. And he knows he fucked up and he was sleeping with a married woman and he was 18 years old, or however old he was. Anyhow, SSM, after he left, went back to Alabama with my wife, and I sat down and realized that I have to tell my father the truth. Your poor dad. I mean, he has to know. Some people could say he's better off not knowing, but he has to know. And oh yeah, by the way, what are you going to do about your frickin' mom? The harpy has been lying to you all these years and lying about your dad and all that because she's lying about your dad. After meeting my biological father, there was no doubt in my mind that this man was my real father. I did not need a DNA test to know this, even though I had a perfect match on 23andMe. The only real question was, why did a DNA test show that I was my father's child all those years ago? He means the guy that he thought was his father, which was a complete mystery to me and my wife until I visited my father in Georgia. My wife and I decided that this is not the type of information that you tell a man over the phone. No, it's not. So we got up super early one morning, around 3 o'clock in the morning, and drove all the way down to Georgia, telling my father that we were just visiting him as we were passing through. My dad was super excited to see us, like always, and I'm not going to lie, SSM, my wife and I knew the truth, and we knew that we were about to break my father's heart. The only real question was, when do you bring it up? And that, guys, is where I'm going to cut things off because this is a longer one, like I said, two-parter. And I'm going to come back in 2 hours, and you're going to hear the rest of this, how this goes with him talking to his dad about the whole thing and then confronting his wonderful mother. And let me tell you, pick up the sarcasm there, she ain't that wonderful. She's a freaking snake, piece of garbage. So I will see you guys in 2 hours.